Hello, welcome to today's webinar. We are delighted to bring along IrelandEAP today to talk about employee assistance programs and how they can really benefit the small business. My name's Helen Quinn. I'm with the Small Firms Association, and today I'm going to introduce you to Stephanie O'Regan, who is with IrelandEAP, and she's going to take you through, my slides have gone stuck, but she's going to take you through the benefits of employee assistance programs for the small business owner. And there's some details there on the SFA Affinity program. And just a quick housekeeping, we are recording this, and we'll have a copy of it available on the SFA website in the next day or two. And if you have any questions, you can contact myself or you can contact IrelandEAP. Okay, thanks very much, Stephanie.
Thank you, Helen. In just one moment. Great. Good morning, everyone. Stephanie O'Regan's my name, and I'm here to talk to you about IrelandEAP and in general EAP programs as they would apply to the small business unit. And I suppose really first out, what I really want to do is I want to give you, the listener, a really strong sense of how EAPs in general can really be helpful to the smaller business operation. And because I think people see it as something that is very much for the large organizations. And of course, we who work in this area, we know that people are people no matter where they are, and workplaces are workplaces. And that's really where we're positioned in terms of this talk. So first off, I want to talk to you about, I suppose, in broad terms, what I want to address is how EAPs can really help business owners like yourself. I also want to dissuade you, if you like, from the concept that it is a very expensive operation. It's actually a very cost-efficient operation, and I hope to really be able to detail that to you. People often say, are we big enough to afford an EAP? Well, I would say to you at the end of this, I think you'll be saying to yourself, can we really afford not to have an EAP? This is a very affordable, proactive option for you to take care of staff well-being and to do so in a proactive way, to do something about problems before problems become an issue. So that's where we're positioned and where I'm hoping you'll be able to see how to go forward. Okay, so I'm going to move some slides forward here, and you will be able to see them as we speak. And first off, I really want to show you the offer itself that we have in place with SFA Affinity, because I think that's one of the first questions in your mind. Well, what kind of offer is it? And then I will go back and talk about EAPs in much more detail. So if I go off screen, you will, and I may come back to discuss some areas then in particular with the screen on. Thank you. Okay. So in terms of EAPs, we would see that it is a big solution for small businesses. These are proactive programs that support emotional and psychological well-being in the workplace. So I just want to step you through a few of these. As I mentioned, do you need an EAP? Do you not need one? Why should you pay for staff well-being, and why does it matter? So I'm going to introduce you to some of the facts and then the solutions and how we operate as a provider ourselves. Okay, so I'm the clinical director of IrelandEAP, and I just as background, it's probably worth saying that I've worked in this area for a long time. I perhaps age myself when I say 30 years, but that's the truth. And my own original experience began in Aer Lingus as an in-house clinician. So I have a very strong background in both big business and then as a small provider, and indeed as a small business myself, which has grown over the years. So I'm very keen and very motivated to bring this kind of solution to the smaller business unit. Okay, so our mission really as IrelandEAP is to bring EAPs into every workplace, large and small. Okay, I want you to see exactly what we're offering, because then I think you can situate your own thinking and situate your own questions. First off is a helpline. We want you to have a possibility of a fairly immediate telephone consultation with a clinician when you have a problem in the workplace, because largely that's what happens. Something happens in the workplace, or you're concerned about a particular staff member, you don't know what to do, you don't know where your duties of care lie, or if this is an area you should intervene in or not. So that's that, having that resource to talk with somebody who knows and has experience in this area is step one of the offer that we are putting in place. And then the offer would continue to support you through the cycle of intervention. In other words, do you know when to stop helping? This is also an area that people run into difficulties with. They wonder, where do I begin and end in this helping process? When should I stop? When should I withdraw? So we'll be addressing that. And referrals then to high quality clinical care. This is what we are putting in place for you. These are the components of all EAP programs, but we are looking, I suppose, specifically at the kinds of issues that a smaller business unit would have. Critical incident care is an area that I have been especially involved in myself, and so I include it in every EAP program, because what happens in any small or large organization is there are always events that can happen out of the blue. It can be a fire on site, it can be the suicide of a staff member, it can be the death of a staff member in a critical road accident. These kinds of things that affect all of the staff. And what we find is that management, because they too are impacted emotionally by these events, that there is an overwhelming sense of emotionality in the workplace, and people simply don't know what to do next. So we are very experienced in that, and that is a particular area of expertise of my own. And we come in and guide management through the notices that should be put out, how things should be managed, how to support staff, and who to support when and in what order. So that's key to the critical incident care aspect of the programme. Clinical care, what is different in what we are providing for you here is that clinical care is on a pay-as-you-go model if you want. That is something that's not in place in the larger EAP providers. It is usually an inclusive fee, but pay-as-you-go gives you some control of this, and I think that's something that's quite important and often very off-putting to the smaller business unit, because you're cost sensitive, of course, and there's always a fear that, oh, do we begin this and then we don't know where to stop. Okay, so this gives you some control. Awareness then is the whole aspect of, I suppose, webinars like what we're doing this morning, that we will be in a position to provide you with lots of guidance, lots of information and guidelines, and I suppose you would say a whole dissemination of well-being and health and well-being information that would be pertinent and to your workplace. But we can also customize it for various organizations who will link up with our scheme. Okay, so moving forward, I want to just talk a little bit for a moment, if I may, just about the big organizational aspect of the model, because this is something the EAPs as a whole system came in from the States many years ago, as far back as about 25 years ago, and they are generally now in Ireland in every workplace with more than 1,000 staff, even 500 staff. So a lot of organizations have them now, and I have seen the openness and the willingness for HR managers and business owners to talk about this area and to obviously to invest in it over time. But let me tell you, the real peak came after the Health and Safety Act of 2005, and again, of course, the refinement of that in 2010. The reason for that is because, as you well know, the wellness and duty of care and the aspect of risk and what employers really needed to do in terms of that duty and care and risk became detailed and became a responsibility to have of employers to have the policies, to have procedures in place, to have an awareness in the workplace, and that is something that has really built and has now become, I suppose you would say, quite essential and basic HR protocol. The other thing that was quite interesting about particularly the 2010 and indeed the many court cases that came after post 2005 was that the aspect of risk became not only physical risk, not just the hard hats and the luminous jackets, it became also the areas of psychological risk, where an organization was known to be aware of a risk that was constantly in place for staff. For example, it might be those in security or those who were flying or those who were dealing with dangerous goods, that there was a known risk. It wasn't just a physical risk, it might be a psychological risk. And so this awareness placed a further aspect, if you like, of responsibility on employers to do something about that element. So that's where we come in with the psychological and emotional risk factors. Okay, and an awareness of all of that. I suppose that paralleled with this awareness of the direct and indirect costs of absenteeism, presenteeism, of course, where people are present but not operating and full functioning, and all this wonderful information that has come out about health and well-being. We know now that prevention and the kinds of things that you can do to build well-being in the workplace, prevention, early intervention if there is a problem, and building resilience and awareness in your staff of how to mind themselves and how to take responsibility for their own health. And remember, EAPs and what you are offering or what you are thinking of offering is you are offering a helping hand to staff to look after their own health. That's really what you're doing. You're not taking control of it. You're not taking responsibility for it. You are simply offering a helping hand. And that's what we do. And we'll detail that a little more. Here's some interesting facts. Did you know that 1 in 5 employees at any one point in time may be in need of support? That is, they're the figures we use. And I would say to you that in a smaller organization, sometimes that's slightly skewed because of it depends on the numbers. But we have noticed this, that if you have a smaller unit and a smaller number of staff, they are more inclined to talk to each other about the service that they have used. And so there can be actually more referrals. Just something to bear in mind. Did you know that 80% of all the issues that impact on performance and wellness in the workplace relate to non-work issues? People are always very surprised at this. They think that EAPs are all about the workplace issue. But as I said to you, I'm quite a few years providing this service, and I can tell you that the number of workplace issues are far, far smaller. Less than, I would even say less than 20%. And we'll go through the kinds of ones that they can be. But the reality is 80% of the issues that people come to me with and come to our EAP services with are of a personal nature, something in their life, something in their relationship, something to do with their children. Okay, so, and they are the issues that we help them with, because as we say, people are people in the workplace doing that job. So it's not just the issues that relate to their work, not just the issues that relate to their workplace, it is the issues that relate to their health and well-being, and they often arise 80% of the time out of their personal life. Okay, a really important point is that people in general manage their stresses, and we take this as a given that people are functioning well, that staff members are able to look after themselves. And as we say, EAPs are about motivating people to feel more resilient, more able, more capable, and that's what we are really offering to them. Now, just to be aware that it is the accumulation of stress. It's when not just one thing happens. Let's say we often would see a parent perhaps has died in some time in the year, and then something else happens, like something in the personal life, or maybe something in the work that they went for a promotion but didn't get it. But then something else happens. So they've managed all those things. But it's the third item, it's the third stressor, the third change that seems to accumulate and often impact functioning, and where people find they put their hand up and say, I'm not really managing well, and where we can see that that's happening. So that's something to bear in mind. It's the staff member who has accumulated stress is a little more at risk of needing our support. Okay, some other stats here. Did you know that stress, anxiety and depression were the second highest causes of work-related illness in Ireland and associated with the longest absences? So and these are all personal within the person's own health and well-being, if you like, domain. So it is sensible to be proactive about minding the health of staff and encouraging them to help to mind theirs. Here's another important one that I really like. Happiness and well-being at the workplace increase productivity by 12%, and unhappy staff are 10% less productive. Not only that, but of course it makes it a lovely place to work. There's lots of other detail around that, which I'm sure you've been presented with from other providers, but also this whole area of the the collaborative and the creative thinking and all of that. So there's so much more behind those figures. Here's one that I think is important: ill treatments. Bullying and harassment, it gets an awful lot of talk, and we'll try and talk a little bit about it later. But I want to just point out to you that some recent research that was done in Galway pointed out these figures, and it was that they surveyed people who had been employed in the previous 2 years, and they asked them about the experiences they had of ill treatments at the workplace. And these are the figures: 43% experienced an ill treatment at the workplace, 17% perpetrated it, but 48% witnessed it. And that in fact prompted us, that research prompted us to establish a program of building a bully-free culture in all our organizations, and that's something we would be giving to you directly. Okay, so we're proactive. We see ourselves as protecting staff, protecting your investment, supporting best practice, and helping you with your duty of care responsibilities. We'll work at an awareness level. We will work at an education level to help you all to understand, be alert to the risk points, because there are risk points, and the dynamics of well-being and stress, and how to deal with these early and effectively. And our support level is offering you that backup clinical care for the critical unforeseeable things, and offering you that consultation, which is really important for management and business owners. Okay, moving forward. Managers and supervisors, we are really aware that we know what they find difficult, because we're dealing with them every day. Managing people can be stressful, and managing the personal component, the upset employee, the person who's having difficulties in their personal life, managers report all the time to us that is the most stressful thing for them. The employee who is ill, troubled, bereaved, upset or overwhelmed. It is difficult for managers to know exactly where to intervene, how to intervene, and people will always say to me, I don't want to upset them further. So it's really important that you get that guide. And one of the things I really encourage in sort of discussing with managers, it's really important to work through what is difficult for you. But I would always also say to you that, remember, intervening and you being able to do it is good for your stress levels and feeling competent and well parametered in terms of how you intervene. But do remember that when you intervene, you can be instrumental in helping that person to turn the road, to turn on that road to health, to turn on that road where they're going to do something for themselves. So it's not a negative thing when you say to somebody, is there something going on that you would like some support with? Because if you would, I can access that for you. You may be ringing a bell for that person, a bell that may change the course of the next 3 years of their life. So it's a very positive step, and I really want people to see it that way, because that is very much my positioning in terms of managing health, managing well-being. Everything you do, the only shame is doing nothing. So everything for me is a positive step forward. Okay, so our EAP will offer you that structured response. We will show you how to do it in a structured way. It will protect staff, bring them towards help as early as possible, and it also protects management, because it's well shown in research terms that operating to a guideline is far less stressful for managers than to be doing everything from the hip, so to speak, that you are ad hoc and completely operating from your own instinct. So having a guide is really important and minimizes the stress on managers. Okay. Common personal issues. I want to just highlight for a moment the kinds of issues that come up in the personal domain. These are just typical: relationships, grief, addictions, issues with children, issues with teenage children, health issues, perhaps the person themselves, perhaps financial issues. That's just a sample of. Let me just say one thing about addiction. Addiction is one of the easiest of all of these to identify, because the person's physical presentation tends to be fairly apparent. The others are a little more nebulous, a little more private, a little more subtle, and managers find that a little more difficult to deal with. Addiction can be straightforward, but one of the things you have to remember is that in addiction, unlike in the others, if you raise addiction, you have to have all the facts, because denial is the hugest part and the first major obstacle in dealing with addiction. Okay, but these are areas that we would give you much more detail on over time. Okay, we mentioned about common the common issues that would be, if you like, at a workplace level. And remember, we were talking about these as 20%. And that is the case. So although I'm giving them equal attention here, it really is the personal that tends to be the areas that present. Okay, bullying and harassment we have mentioned, stress and how a person is being managed. And I often say this to managers who perhaps don't always like it, but the reality is that people often have a difficulty with the style and the management style of the person who is managing them. I know that's not something that people like, but it is something for managers to be aware of, that their style can be very effective in terms of getting the task done, but their people management aspect of it often can do with some tweaking. And that sensitivity, I think, is what, if you can be sensitive to both, that is what makes excellence in management. And I think that would be our perspective. Okay, the other areas that people present quite a lot with are workload, feeling overloaded in terms of work, feeling a relentless pressure for to be more and more productive, and to have less and less downtime. And I know we have to have staff. It has to be efficient, it has to be cost efficient, people have to be productive, but it's something that I've seen over the last number of years, is that there is because everything is so, of course, computerized and measurable and quantifiable, that there can be an increase in the constant pace of output for staff, and it often can leave them without moments, the natural pauses of the day that allow for just some pause to the system, some small rest. I'm not saying that people need, a quarter of an hour every hour, but there is a relentlessness about it. And I think that's something to be mindful of. It's something that we see coming up in the workplaces over and over. Okay, and critical incidents, as we have mentioned, I don't need to cover that, I feel, again at this point. Okay, so they are the common workplace issues. Okay, in terms of solutions for staff, we've talked about what normally we do is we would operate either through your intranet, if you have any internal systems to give information out to staff, or we would do, like we are doing now, a webinar that can be put out for staff to look at. And we would take various areas. It may be managing grief, it may be taking care of your own stress levels, building your resilience. And so we would be proactive on that in consultation with HR. And we also tend every year to look at the kinds of issues that have come up in each organization, and we structure our talks around that. In other words, we try and address the kinds of issues that have come up. That's very useful. Building resilience, giving them easy access to the information, and obviously having easy access to support like ourselves when required. And I'll just going to go forward with the solutions for managers, and then we'll talk a little more about IrelandEAP. Solutions for managers are, of course, as I said, the biggest area of stress. We will offer you that clarification on performance versus personal wellness. This is an area that gets very confusing for managers. They feel, well, can I talk about that? Is it performance or personal? And it's very good if we can help you to get very clear on that. And we find that it's the area that managers speak back on to us more than anything, that they feel they really appreciate it. So we will assist you in processing and managing the issues and stresses that are in place. We will manage your concerns, upskill you for that conversation, for that difficulty, for that difficult conversation. It's not only about taking notes and having your detail in place. It's also about me talking to you and seeing, because you are this manager who has to talk to this person, and to talk to you about what it is personally that you find difficult, what it is you're afraid will happen in that conversation. Are you afraid if they're upset? Have you done this before? Has it gone wrong for you before? And all of the things that you know about the person can really complicate it. But also, of course, what complicates it is who you are, the life you have, your approach, and how your skill set. So it's to help you not to feel stress in that conversation. Okay, and we'll be mindful of your duty of care obligations and help you to see where to begin and end in that context. And we will resource you with the backup clinical support. Okay, we will go into more specifics, but you have these here at any time with addicted employees. I think one of the important things to talk about, if I may, is with all of these workplace issues and personal issues, EAP is an opportunity to do something in a proactive way about these issues. Doing nothing leaves you, in some ways, pretending to yourself that they don't exist. These problems do exist, and we know it from all of the legal cases. We know that what happens when these situations end up in court, we know that the organizations who tend to have problems in a legal way are those who have not done anything to address the known risks or the known issues, and that's where we come into play. Okay, here's just an example here on the, I mentioned to you about how we had brought in a small program to intervene in terms of the bullied employee. And I just want to show you those slides here because we simply put these into workplaces and we got an extremely good reaction to them, and they're available to anyone who signs up. They are very simple but very effective. And probably the most effective aspect of it was in the third one there, when we told people that, these are the facts from the research, that people who are bullied are more often high performers and mostly higher performing than the one who bullies them. And that's very useful to people because it helps people to feel less downtrodden, and we got a great reaction to that. It's just an example. I've mentioned there just about the known risks and taking those steps, and I'm just mindful of time here, so I'm going to go forward. I've really highlighted what we are going to do for you as managers to clarify those issues, being mindful of your duty of care obligations and upskilling you. That's what we're doing. So let's just talk about the offer for a moment, if I may, because that is something that clearly you're interested in. And there are two ways really to look at it. We are providing, what we're trying to do in option one is we're trying to offer you a service that you feel to bring you into the whole service, but to leave you with control at a cost level and at a financial level. So our joining fee has been discounted by 20% at $520 joining fee, and that is an annual fee, and that gives you access to all services. We will have once signed up, there will be a facility for you to book a time with a clinician, let's say a 15 or 30-minute consultation at any point in time via your calendar. Okay. Then you have a pay-as-you-go clinical care, and this is something that the larger organizations, larger providers do not provide. And pay-as-you-go clinical care is very useful to you but you do have to think of, and I maybe should say that you do have to think of within a 4-session model, that if a person does need clinical care, it's seldom that needs just one session. It would normally be up to 3 to 4. So you need to think in that sense. Okay. In terms of costs, you can per capita that for your staff and see what cost it is then for you to provide a proactive service that takes care of your staff, that offers awareness, well-being, and builds a healthier workplace for them. And as I say, it depends on your numbers of staff. The other option, option 2, which is one that I've offered over a number of years with people, and that is an inclusive fee, because we operate on the basis of a 5% take up. So we can, if you like, bring that forward and assess our costs, if you like, and we can tailor it then to your company's requirements. Some people may have more needs in one area than another, and so the all-inclusive fee includes all of the above and includes the clinical sessions. Okay, I feel I've come to the end of my time, and although I didn't put a watch in front of me, and I really would like to say thank you so much. I've really enjoyed doing this, and I will look forward to your inquiries, and you are free to inquire with direct, obviously, to us and or directly to Small Firms Association. Thank you so much for your time. Stephanie Regan, Ireland EAP. Thank you so much.